EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a championship victory Monday edition of Birds 365, and your Super Bowl Eagles are officially world champions for the second time in franchise history. Johnny Mac, you were there to consume the game live and in person. The great people of JAKIB Nation have been waiting to hear from John McMullen. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday morning, a championship Super Bowl Monday morning, brother?
I am tired, Zander. I am tired. That's how I feel. But obviously, everybody else is in a different mood. For people that stuck around for the late post-game show, they already know one of the most dominant performances I've ever seen at this level, where it's supposed to be the best versus best, because sure didn't look like that. Philadelphia Eagles made the Kansas City Chiefs. And remember who that is. Two-time reigning champions coming into that game. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They destroyed them. They dismantled them. And the game was over in the first half. And I got a lot of superstitious people when I said that on X. Oh, you had plenty of time. No, game was over. Game was absolutely over. Kansas City couldn't do anything. They only did something in garbage time. It was as dominant a performance you will see when it's supposed to be NFC champions against AFC champions.
Unbelievable stuff there, Johnny Mac. You talked about, I think dismantled is the best word to use for it. Really did dismantle them. And the scoreboard, as you mentioned before on our pre-show conversation, is not indicative of how the game really went. I don't know, how many points did the Chiefs have in garbage time? 16? 16 points?
16. I believe it was 40-6.
40-6. Oh my God.
With 8 minutes left in the game. 8:01 specifically, when Jake Elliott hit a 50-yard field goal. Jake, by the way, had something underreported because he had a bad season.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that, as I said, some bad snaps again. But you're nitpicking with this team. You have to. But he's been very good indoors even this year. He only missed one field goal, and that was a 60-yarder indoors. So he was rock solid. Started with a 48-yarder, 29, 48 again, and then 50. And they took a 40-6 lead with 8:01 left in the game. And then you had a little bit of garbage offense from Kansas City. But, yeah, I mean, and it was 24-0 at halftime. Once Zach Bond made that diving interception, and the Eagles cashed it in with a Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown touchdown with about a minute and a half left in the first half. That was it. That the door was shut, and it ended up being 24 points for the Eagles in the first half, 23 yards.
That, John, that's the craziest stat I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean that's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you can't give the Super Bowl MVP to a coach, and you shouldn't. But, boy, that's as close as it ever came. I don't know if Canton is listening, the Hall of Fame out there, but you should get Vic's game plan and put that in the Hall of Fame. Because that was amazing stuff. But while I say that, and Vic was the first one to say it as well, you can have a plan, and if your players don't execute it, and specifically Josh Sweat, Milton Williams up front,
right?
They completely dominate, as they do, and that's the way how he builds this team. Everybody talks about Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith on offense, defense. Everybody talks about the corners and Zach Bond and CJ and the guys making plays. They win because of their offensive line and defensive front, and they
No.
won the Super Bowl because of the offensive line and defensive front.
It's amazing what they were able to do. We're going to dive into all of that. I do want to get you to break down a little bit of Vic Fangio's game plan that you saw. You kind of gave some of us on the post-game show, but you were going in and out. So we will talk to you about that a little bit later on in the show. I do just want to set the stage here, John. And, you've been covering this team now for a long time, and you saw their Super Bowl in 17, and now this is their second Super Bowl in franchise history. What's this mean for the franchise? Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, the process that they've gone on, and they've really assembled the beast here in Philadelphia, and it looks like it's here to stay. Now let's see how it all unfolds. But this team is young. They got good guys in the locker room. All of your young guys contributed in the football game. What this means for the Eagles franchise, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, they're set up. There's no doubt about it. But, a lot of crazy things can happen in the NFL, starting with injuries. So you can't take anything for granted. I think Jeffrey Lurie had a good quote after the game. And this all starts with Jeffrey because he is certainly the crux of it all and what he allows Howie Roseman to do. But, he was asked basically where the franchise stands in the NFL and in pro sports. And he's learned, he's been the owner for over a quarter century now. And you remember his gold standard quote, which he thinks was one of his biggest mistakes. And this time he said, we got to remain humble. And I think that was sort of an indication of growth, because the minute you think you have this league solved, it will jump up and bite you in the ass. So I thought that was a really good frame of what needs to happen. But certainly from a talent perspective and from just an ability to do some things, everybody's talking about Myles Garrett already. And the Eagles better be careful with that, by the way, because people around the league are starting to open their eyes and talk about the T word. But, a lot of GMs, I say it all the time for people who watch the show, but a lot of GMs can't do some of the things Howie does. As far as, Jeffrey calls it being risk averse. I use that term all the time. He likes his GM to not be risk averse. A lot of other guys have to GM for their job, so that's a big part of it as well. But we got to remain humble, and that's what Jeffrey Lurie said. Because
I'll tell you what, though, they are built. That's a great quote, though, from Jeffrey Lurie. I like it. I like the humble quote, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, I mean, when it's tough, you want to spike the football, and certainly fans are going to be spiking the football. But, the organization's got to be a little bit different and understand what it takes to win. And they know that. I mean, if you look at this year and all the adversity early in the season, and how many things have to go right, and you just think about, I always say, forget about Saquon Barkley and Vic Fangio living up to their reputations, which almost never happens, and actually exceeding them. But, the Zach Bond story, and he finishes. He goes from, think about week 1 in Brazil and Zach Bond all the way up until the Super Bowl Sunday. Get it the whole year. The whole year. $3.5 million player.
It's
kind
amazing,
of throwaway. Man. Oh, we'll bring in Zach Bond. He's a good athlete. We'll see what he can do.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Great interception too, by the way. That was not an easy ball to catch that Zach Bond picked off.
Oh no, that was really difficult. And he held it off the turf. I was looking at that closely because I'm like, there's no way he held on to that. And he did.
Yeah.
And it's been that kind of year, special year for Zach Bond. So many things clicked with the rookies. Cooper's a genius, man. I know everybody, on his 22nd birthday, everybody's making a big deal about that. reads Patrick Mahomes, comes off his, primary responsibility, intercepts the ball, takes it home. Yeah, special team. And defensively, I can't say enough. About Vic Fangio and that defense, and just his ability. He in Philadelphia, where I couldn't convince anybody, Vic Fangio was better than Steve Spagnuolo. In Philadelphia, where they want to blitz from the buses, they did not blitz once in the Super Bowl. Did not blitz once in the Super Bowl. And everybody's happy.
I never seen Patrick Mahomes look like that, man. He was seeing ghost out there, Johnny Mac. I mean, he was all over the place, stepping up in the sacks. He was seeing ghost. That's the best way to describe it. He was seeing ghost.
Yeah, and he's kind of seen it all. And Vic was joking around because somebody had said something that got back to him about hit the defense and what they were trying to accomplish. But, it's not like he threw anything new out there, but I think he surprised Kansas City just how much he relied on quarters coverage. And because and I'll have to look at the numbers, but in game, they were playing that more than they had played it all season. To try to deal with the short stuff underneath and the goal was to try to take away the first read of Patrick Mahomes, and they did it consistently.
Yeah.
So Xavier Worthy got loose a couple times late, but who cares?
Yeah, that was on Xavier on Tristan McCullum and Sidney Brown, I think it was on. Exactly.
I mean, at that point when it's 40-6, I don't even pay attention, but yeah, I mean, he mentioned, and that's the thing about Vic. He goes into the game with a plan, but he's the best in the business on game day. And it's not like he came into the game saying, I'm not going to blitz, but he's the smartest guy in the world. He's like, well, I don't have to go. I don't have to blitz. So that means I can keep everybody in coverage. You're not running the football. You don't have to worry about that. Just takes advantage of the situation. Just clamp down on the Kansas City Chiefs.
No doubt about it, man. Pretty unbelievable stuff there with Vic Fangio and his game plan. Johnny Mac, Jalen Hurts gets Super Bowl MVP. I know it was a dominant defensive performance, but I do want you to kind of analyze. Look, you've covered this guy's career, his entire career, John. You saw him come into the league. You were covering this team. You saw him, take over the starting position. You were covering this team. You saw him go to the Super Bowl in 22. You were covering him, and here he is now at the top of the mountain holding up a Super Bowl trophy and a Super Bowl MVP in an essence of a fuck you to anybody who doubted me. Your thoughts on Jalen Hurts and what he was able to do in the Super Bowl and just kind of the story of how his career has gone now.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of the fuck you narrative because I don't think he's disrespected on a consistent basis by the people, certainly that cover him. But,
I always all ask him about it on the post-game interviews.
Well, I know. I'm saying I'm not a fan of it. I know that's the narrative. I don't believe it's true. I've said it pretty consistently on the show that, there's certain people that are engagement grifters, and yeah, they say some crazy stuff when he has a bad game. But I think for the most part, you see the stuff, when he throws for 65 yards, we tell you, hey, they didn't have a good game. And when he plays well, we tell you, hey, he played really well, which is what you're supposed to do. So, but that said, I go back to 2017 with the underdog stuff. If it works for you, use it. And it works for him.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said before, they control the narratives, John. So he's definitely disrespected in terms of that. I mean, the first question he gets asked on the sideline after winning a Super Bowl is, "What do you have to say about all the people who doubted you?" And he's like, "I can't control what these people think of me." But like that question doesn't come if the narrative hasn't seeped into the mainstream media, which is what largely the perception is of people outside of this echo chamber who are diehard Eagles fans.
Yeah, I'm just saying I personally don't agree with it. I know everybody else agrees with it. I'm not trying to say it doesn't exist. And certainly Eagles fans believe it because I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
I hear that I disrespect him, and he would tell you the first that that's not true, by the way. But you know, one of the concerns with this team was could it do what it needed to do in big spots if people took away Saquon Barkley? Well, we never found that out until the Super Bowl, really. It was probably from production wise Saquon's worst game of the season. His longest run was 10 yards, 2.3 yards a carry. And it didn't even matter because they were so effective. And it's a different kind of effective. It's not like he threw for 400 yards, but, you know, he was very effective throwing the football. They kept it to where they wanted to keep it, 15 to 25 passing attempts, ended up being 22. But those 22 were very effective. And he dumped it off to Saquon. Saquon was probably more of a threat in the passing game that we've seen in weeks. Not that it was great. It was 6 catches for 40 yards, but at least, you know, you could dump it off. He got Devontae deep. AJ's stats don't look that good, but he was always open.
I know.
And that was a poor call early in the game. That would have been the first big play of the game on a go route. By the way, if people listen to Birds 365, they knew they were going to throw go routes, and they knew Vic was going to outcoach Steve Spagnuolo. But they want go route, go route, go route. Every time they knew they were going to blitz, they felt that their corners couldn't hold up with AJ, Devontae, and even Jahan Dotson, who ended up having the first big play. So it was, you know, Jalen was a very effective performance, I would describe it as. And that's all they need with this offense. And, you know, like Super Bowl MVPs are funny because, you know, for now, they're the Super Bowl champions, and everyone will look at the list and say Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts. He was better in the first Super Bowl, but he didn't win.
Right.
So
well, you got to win. You got to win.
Yeah. So that's how those things, and you know, as history goes, and years pass by. Oh, he's Super Bowl MVP. He was the best game he ever played. Maybe was against Kansas City in Super Bowl 57. So he's always played well on big stages. If you go back to college, and that's ability. And I talk about his relentlessness as a player, as a person. And you know, if it fuels you, it's not a lie if you believe it. Famous philosopher George Costanza said that. If you believe it, it's not a lie.
I'll take it. Johnny Mac, I will say though, man, he made some big throws. That throw to Devontae Smith was a thing of beauty. He was throwing the ball well to A.J. Brown. I mean, I know he had the interception and a couple underthrows, but you could kind of see why, obviously, the interception happened. Pressure right in his face. He didn't follow through on the football, so it airmailed a little bit. But I thought he really played really well, man. When he saw it one-on-one, I thought he threaded the needle, and that was a big part of throwing off Steve Spags' game plan.
Yeah, I mean, they just went go right. Yeah, and Kansas City didn't adjust, and there were 2 others he could have hit. He had AJ for what would have been maybe a touchdown. Would have been another long game. He didn't put enough air under the football, underthrew that. As you mentioned, underthrew the one he got hit on. If he got that football out there, who knows? Certainly going to be a 50-50 ball. So, but when you talk about 22 throws, and there's 2 more that he could have had big plays. Kansas City had no answers for what was going on.
By the way, shout out to the offensive line because Chris Jones wasn't much of an impact in this game at all, Johnny Mack, and I thought he was going to be an impact.
Well, this offensive line is just, they're another one. You're never going to give the offensive line as a group any awards or, but I do hope people realize just how important they are to this team because, early in the game, Kansas City started with their blitzes and they just were not getting home. They were not getting home. And, the AJ play that got called back was just picked up beautifully. And you said, oh, here we go. And they're doing the right things. And there were a few adjustments, some corner blitzes that got home and things like that. But for the way Kansas City usually plays defensively, and again, if you're bringing an extra guy, a lot of that is just getting the football out when you're supposed to get it out. But the offensive line, for what they're supposed to do, dominant. It's the word of the day.
Dominant. It was a dominant performance all across the board, John. You took the 2-time world champs and you made them look like a shell of themselves with the whole world watching. John, I was joking at halftime. I'm like, that whole ref conspiracy might actually be in play now because this is bad for business. This is such a blowout. Those $8 million 30-second ad spots.
Yeah.
The NFL needs to keep people tuned into this game, man.
It's funny. Nobody's talking about the referees anymore. That's what I always say, man. Yeah. Was that a bad call early? There are some bad calls on Kansas City as well. That personal foul call on McDuffie, that was brutal.
That was one of the that was the makeup call. That was the worst. That was a
makeup call. That was a classic NBA makeup call. That was a brutal call.
Yeah.
I had some knucklehead Kansas City fan. Yeah, I go, well, you've never listened to me a day in your life because people don't listen. I don't complain about officials, and the Eagles just showed what you do about officials. Just freaking dominate. Don't worry about it.
Right.
You'll get some calls. They'll get some calls. But if you're better, just be better.
Too big to rig. Where have we heard that before? Hilarious. Good stuff there. No problem with the officials in this game. Johnny Mac, we got a bunch of super chats coming in, so we'll get to the great people of JAKIB Nation and want to talk about it all. But any other things, I think about Kellen Moore, John, on his way out the door here. I thought he called a pretty masterful game too, man. He had that offense working without Saquon.
Yeah, I should mention, by the way, Jeffrey Lurie basically confirmed. He was asked, "Do you expect to lose Kellen Moore?" And he said, "I do." Blah blah blah. We're going to have to wish him the best with New Orleans. So, depending on the time, the parade's probably going to be Friday, probably.
Yeah, that's what they put out there already.
Maybe he'll stick around for that, maybe not, but yeah, he'll be in New Orleans. But getting the early start on the offseason. 1 year championship, Kellen Moore. Stop with the continuity stuff.
Another change. Another change coming, Johnny Mac. If I'm Kellen Moore, I'm calling somebody. I'm calling somebody this morning, and I'm saying, whatever you are offering, I need 50% more on top. Click. Hang up. Hang up. We're late in the process. Hang up. I need 50% more on top. Johnny Mac, Cooper DeJean, man, 22 years old yesterday, and he picks off Patrick Mahomes to return one to the house. What a moment for a rookie player. I was joking on the postgame show. LeBron James will never pass up a handshake with the great Cooper DeJean ever again, Johnny Mac.
Did he pass? Oh, when he was at the Sixers game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know Cooper, so he knew Paris Campbell, and obviously,
I'm saying that's my point. He knows Cooper now.
Yeah, man, yeah. LeBron's a big football fan. He probably should have known him, but whatever. Who cares? He was giving his love to his buddy Paris Campbell. and obviously AJ and Devontae. Devontae's a huge basketball fan. Unfortunately, he's a Celtics fan, but yeah, Devontae's Jeffrey Lurie's a huge basketball fan.
Yeah.
Celtics, of course. So Sixers are so bad, nobody can get behind them. But yeah, Cooper's great, man. You know, he's just the two rookies as a whole. And one of the Eagles told me, and he looked around. It was, you know, basically the Eagles are in good hands with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell for a long time, and it's been a long time since they've had cornerbacks like that. And they'll have to figure out the third guy moving forward, probably, because it's unlikely Slay's going to be back at his age and
You think
his
Slay's going to
number.
retire?
He said he's going to play, but he's still playing at a really high level. He still can play, but you still talk about that age corners and how much money he commands. I don't know how the Eagles get that done. So, but we'll see how that stuff shakes out.
Maybe they feel good about Isaiah Rodgers coming in, John. He's been pretty good in the moments that he's been in the game. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he has. But I don't think the Eagles, because he's got some size issues, I don't think the Eagles necessarily look at him as a full-time starter because he's so undersized for the outside. Plus, he's got, right now they have him on the cheap because another one of those Howie moves that other people aren't allowed to do. The Eagles signed him when he was suspended and waited. Most teams aren't allowed to do that, to be honest. And so, yeah, that part of it, I'm not sure the goal pretty clearly is if Ringo develops, they'll probably give him training camp next year. You keep Cooper inside. If not, it's probably going to be Quinyon and Cooper outside and figure out the slot from there.
Jenny Mac, we got to celebrate for a couple of days here. The great people are going to be celebrating, but I tell you what, those off-season talking points, Johnny Mac. We're going to be in off-season mode on Birds 365 soon, which sometimes is even more fun than the regular season. So I'm looking forward to doing that. John, two guys who were incredible yesterday on the defense, two guys who are about to hit the free agency market, Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. Both of those guys had great games yesterday in the Super Bowl, and they earned themselves quite a bit of money, Johnny Mac, on the way out the door potentially.
Yeah, they did. You would like to think that other teams are not reactive to 60 minutes of football, but they are. Most of the other teams aren't as savvy and smart as the Eagles. So, they both made extra money because of the way they performed in the Super Bowl. And that makes things more difficult for the Eagles. I don't think they can keep them both. Hopefully they can keep one. But it's going to be interesting.
Who would be your preference there? Because, Joshua had a huge Super Bowl, but I don't know.
Well, if you get Myles Garrett, it's pretty easy. Get Myles Garrett, it's pretty easy. And I don't know if they're going to get.
Wait, you mentioned earlier in the show when we talked about Myles Garrett, you mentioned a T word. What is it? What does that mean? Josh B asked, what's the T word?
I just heard a lot of whispers around New Orleans this week that if that happens, the Eagles better give up proper compensation, because if not, the league's going to have a big eye on that one.
But what's the T word?
Tampering.
Oh, okay. All right, I got you.
Yeah.
The league are you telling me the league is going to put the clamps on Howie Roseman running circles around the rest of the league?
The rest of the league is jealous, and the rest of the league is not understanding of what the difference is. Thinking for whatever reason, everybody goes to the conspiracy route in life in general, other than what I just said. Let your GM have a longer leash. Allow him to make mistakes. Allow him to learn from his mistakes. Don't fire him the minute he gets something wrong. Try that instead of complaining about stuff that hasn't even happened, by the way.
Howie Roseman is a master at improving on and learning from what he does wrong, and he does it at a rapid speed. I mean, if you look at early Howie Roseman, all the knocks or all the deficiencies on the roster. I mean, even the most recent one, which was he can't draft defense because a couple of years ago the Georgia guys didn't look so good. Well, the Georgia guys are a big part of the reason we just won a damn Super Bowl, and they're all young. I mean, even that.
Well,
now,
you can
throw that out the window because he's drafted defensive guys in the last 3 years, and they're all good.
I wish fans would learn from that, but I don't expect them to. Sometimes it takes a little longer. And you don't just shit on people because they don't hit the ground running as rookies. And you saw it this year with Nakobe Dean before he got injured. And it was good. Nakobe was in the locker room, smoking a cigar, having some champagne. So it's good to see him. And hopefully he can make it back. But, Howie talked to us before they went down here. And he mentioned the revamp. They knew they had to get younger on defense after 2022. So he said it wasn't 12 months. People think it was 12 months. It was a 3-year process that started with Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean to rebuild the defense. And then you do Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. And then this year, obviously, Quinyon and Cooper DeJean at the top of the draft. That's pretty fucking good.
It's incredible, dude.
But, if you think about Jordan specifically and Nakobe and Nolan and even Jalen Carter, there were people criticizing Jalen. He was second defensive rookie of the year. Arguably should have been first. I voted for him. Should have been first in my mind. People were still shitting on him. So hopefully people will learn from the patience, but I doubt it. So it's just part of it, though. It's part of it.
It's amazing, though, man. They're like, even my guy Joe Whitt brings up a guy, Jalix Hunt. And I'm like, dude, Jalix Hunt looks good, John. He's small, but he looks like he's going to be a force in this league. The way he rushes the passer, he's got a knack for it, man. He looks like he's going to be a damn good player when he kind of fills into his body. You see Nolan Smith kind of get bigger in his last year. I expect the same from Jalix Hunt. I think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown a lot of things. I mean, that I think people forget when Brandon got hurt, which was November 24th. There was a lot of panic going on because Nolan Smith had really not shown much at that point, and Jalix Hunt hadn't really played much at that point. And those were the two guys that were going to have to step up. Because Bryce Hupp was also injured. And that didn't look good on paper. And it turned out to be one hell of a silver lining because Nolan just went nuts down the stretch. And Jalix showed a lot of things to make you never want to lose players like Josh Sweat. And if they were going to give the MVP to a defensive player, which they rarely do, it would have been Josh Sweat. But I would say he's the most likely to leave. And it's nice to have a young player with some upside in Jalix Hunt that you can count on and try to add from there.
Now I'm wondering if the league will stop Howie from saying goodbye, Josh Sweat. Hello, Myles Garrett, Nolan Smith, and Jalix Hunt. Now that's a pretty good 3-man rotation for Vic Fangio, I'd say. Let's see if he can.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Vic wants to play 3 men. He wants to play more than that, but he had to down the stretch, and that's why he did it. But you don't want to go through. And remember, with the Eagles, it's not 17 games. You're trying to play really 20. They had to play 21. You don't want to go with a 3-man rotation for 21 games. So that was just something they were forced to do down the stretch because of injuries.
BG, Johnny Mac, was that his final game yesterday? You think for sure that he's going to retire and hang him up, man? He goes out on top?
I think so. I mean, why push it? He loves playing. He can still play.
Yeah.
But to go out like that, man, 15 years, you go out with a Super Bowl. Nobody's played more games for the Philadelphia Eagles. This team never won a Super Bowl before Brandon Graham showed up. One of the great Eagles of all time. And he was a big part of his talk to the team on Saturday night. He was a big part of, just the whole energy boost. He only played 13 snaps. So, I said 5 to 10 maybe. So he got a little bit over that. That's partially the blowout as well. Bunch of guys played, like, as you mentioned, Wade, Tristan McCullum, Sidney Brown. Trot got in. Everybody got in. Ringo got in. Thomas Booker played some. Avonte Maddox had a big play. Good for Avonte Maddox.
Yeah, on a 4th down. How about that for Avonte Maddox?
Isaiah got in. Everybody got to eat. It was such a blowout. So everybody got on the field in the Super Bowl, which is pretty cool.
John, I just brought up Brandon Graham. I'll go to the other big name there. It's Lane Johnson. I think this secured a trip to the Hall of Fame for our star right tackle, Lane Johnson. What say you?
Well, I thought he was already going. So, I mean.
Yeah, now he might be a first ballot.
He's one of the best right tackles of all time. This is one of the best defensive lines of all time, offensive lines of all time. I've been saying that for a while since GM told me, and I started thinking about it. I've seen a lot of good offensive lines, and this is the best one I've ever seen. And Lane's probably, I think Jordan had the best year for the offensive lineman, Jordan Mailata, but I think Lane's the most talented. He just doesn't give up anything, and he gets no help.
It's amazing. He just is out on an island every single game, John, and he never gets beat. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And think about how many good rushers over the years.
Yeah.
He just completely shuts down. And then the guys inside, Landon Dickerson, wasn't even an issue with the knee injury. Cam Jurgens with the back injury. Mekhi Becton had to leave for a little bit, but was able to come back with that knee. So, that might be a little bit problematic. But you still have Tyler Steen. But for this year, Mekhi Becton, he added a lot because of his just power and their ability to run the football with Saquon. I think it was just another one of those perfect bits that maybe it wasn't thought that way at the beginning, but it ended up that way. And I don't know if you can bring it back and replicate it, but because there's so many question marks with health and what kind of contract Mekhi Becton's going to get. But if others are concerned about his health, bring him back, man. Run it as long as you can.
We'll see what happens there, Johnny Mac. Let's get to a couple super chats from the great people of JAKIB Nation. Congrats to all of the great people who have been waiting for this moment, the great fans of this team, the great people of this city, and all around the world, really. I talk to all you guys all the time. We got people from everywhere who watch the show. I got a message last night from a guy who, where the hell was he? He was in, like, Indonesia, I think. He was, because he was listening to the postgame show, and he emailed me when he said that. So, unbelievable, but big moment for everybody in the city of Philadelphia, no doubt about it. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the parade will be on Friday. because of a snowstorm, I guess, has pushed it back a little bit. So you're looking at a Friday parade, everybody. John, at that point, why don't they just make it Saturday so that everybody can go without having to take off work if you already pushed it to Friday? But I guess that's a nightmare logistically for the city. Let's get to some super chats here. James Carver, like J-Mac, spiking the football regarding Vic Fangio last night. I'm spiking the football on three things. The early bye was the best opportunity to solidify schemes. And what about my two boys, Sweaty J and JD, dominating after being called a homer on both? Sweaty J did dominate, and Jordan Davis showed up, James Carver, so you could take that football and spike it, brother. Johnny Mac, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, feel free. Everybody's going to spike the football. But when it comes to Vic, that's where I spike the football. I couldn't believe in Philadelphia, I couldn't convince people that he was the best coordinator. After watching what they watched, and everybody's, Steve Spagnuolo, one trick pony. Vic throws, you don't make Patrick Mahomes see ghosts by being a one trick pony.
I know.
But
Andy Reid too, John. Like normally Andy Reid in-game adjusts and can make something happen. They never got anything going, really. They really didn't.
Not until 8 minutes in the game and it was over, which is worthless. So yeah, I mean that part of it certainly is the case, and yeah, but everybody feel free to spike your respective football, goofy or not.
Yeah, everybody's going to have a football to spike, no doubt about it. Good stuff, everybody. We appreciate everybody checking in here. Real Zeal checks in. Johnny Mac, he's taking a shot. McMullen, Saquon Barkley will have no impact on the passing game. Leading receiver in the Super Bowl, Saquon. He wasn't their leading receiver.
He wasn't the leading receiver. He had 6 receptions, I guess he's talking about, for 40 yards. And that was his best receiver. Look at this. See, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, come on, Zeal.
Spike a realistic football. Of all the things, Saquon had perhaps the most historic rushing season of all time. He beat Terrell Davis. You can make a strong argument. He was not relevant in the freaking passing game.
Zeal, that's maybe the one football Johnny Mac isn't going to let you spike today, and I kind of agree with
him. Well, no, you can spike it. I said, even if it's stupid, feel free. I'd go the other route. I think he caught. What did Saquon catch on the season?
Not many. I think he had
33 receptions for 278 yards. Oh, what dominance in the passing game. Yeah, come on, Real Zeal. Come on. Jesus. You got 50 footballs you could spike, and that's where you go?
Zeal,
watch this team?
Zeal, I'm going to give you credit for something because Zeal said he put an LOL at the end. He was joking around. But still, Zeal, I'm going to give you credit for one thing. Johnny Mac's on probably 3 hours of sleep right now, and you almost got to stop it out of him on this morning. That is well done.
I would say stop it. There's, again, 50 footballs you can spike, but do it in a relevant fashion. Come on.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious stuff right there from Zeal. Good stuff, Zeal. Brian Garner says, in my Ric Flair voice, whether you like it or you don't like it, learn to love it. Woo! Super Bowl champs, gentlemen. Where is Pumper? Pumper dropped
that's a good spike. A Ric Flair woo spike. That's a good spike. That's a good spike. Yeah, you're the man now. So to be the man, you got to beat the man. Now you got to beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL. Yep.
No doubt about it. And Pumper did check in, John, and he dropped $100 super chat, giving kudos to Jalen Hurts. So Brian Pumper is officially a Jalenite. He is a Jalenite, and he will be one until proven otherwise. All right. Brian Pumper, our newest Jalenite. Dirty D checks in. We're going to Disney World. Yeah, when is that? Is that today they go there?
I don't.
Or the MVP goes there?
Do they still do that? I don't even know. I assume they still do it. I wonder. It might be that. I don't know.
William Johnson checks in. Respectfully disagree, John. The national media constantly disrespects Jalen. Go Eagles.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, but I mean, I'm not. Yeah, that's fine. I just don't think he's disrespected. I don't. Now, I'm not saying there's not the grifters of the world who
Yeah, but they
say
have
1 week.
control in the narrative. That's the problem. Like in
But
your world, wait. Can I? And let me just get more clarity on this because people are gonna be commenting. Oh, Johnny Matt, how could he say that? In your world, where you're talking to GMs and coaches and people in the NFL circle, is that who you're talking about when you say he's not disrespected? Because from the outside, for these people, the Emmanuel Achos, the Dan Orlovskis, the Stephen A. Smiths, all of those guys, the us, Stilio, all of those people create the narrative, the perception of a player. Okay. Whether they like it or not, that's how it works. So that's why they say he's disrespected. When you say he's not, I take it as you're talking to different people. You're not talking to Orlovsky.
well,
You're
not
talking
only
to
people
GM.
in the game. I mean, you hear people in the game. This week, Chris Jones talked really nicely about him. Yeah, people in the league, yes, certainly do not disrespect him. Um, and then the people that cover him on a daily basis certainly do not disrespect him. Those people that you mentioned, all right, but to me, they're not relevant. Now, if Jalen uses it and he does use it successfully, and he does use it successfully, that's fine too. I have no problem with it. I just said, from my perspective, I don't think he's disrespected other than from certain people that do it on purpose. And they do it on purpose to do what they're doing to the fans that you're talking about. Because 1 week you got Orlovsky saying, oh, he's got to go. And the next week he's telling you how great he is. So, I mean, if that affects you, I mean, feel free to let it affect you, but how could it affect you? Like, how could you go from he's great to he stinks or vice versa in 1 week?
John, I love how John simply in his pragmatic approach debunks it easily. Love it, John. I know why you won debate school, John, or whatever you won, debate team, whatever you called it the one time. That was hilarious. No Limit says, J-Mac, where does this 2025 team rank amongst all-time teams? 8 games this year, including the Super Bowl, that we blew teams out and put backups in.
It's a very good team. I mean, the different eras, to me, it's impossible to rank teams because the game's completely different now than it was, say, when the Steelers were winning 4 Super Bowls with, Terry Bradshaw and company. So it's really hard to compare. And back in those days, you could keep a core group of Hall of Fame guys together for 10 years. There was no free agency. So, but in the modern landscape, it's certainly the best Eagles team. And I'm not going back Ray Didinger to 1945 and 1950. I mean, maybe those guys were better. I'm saying in the modern era, it's certainly the best Eagles team.
I don't care how successful the 40s and 50s teams were. They weren't better than this team. Those athletes looked nothing like they look today.
Well, yeah, but I understand.
Oh no, you weren't watching. Wait, they put a graphic, John, on the Super Bowl yesterday. All right, I think it was Super Bowl 1 and Super Bowl 59, and they showed the average height and weight of the offensive line for I think it was the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, but that people say that in the made-up time machine. If you have a made-up time machine, it's got to work both ways. In other words, if you want to make fun of the Super Bowl 1 team or the Super Bowl 2 team, and they're certainly not as good at athletes as they are now, well, they were living in a different time. They had to go out and sell insurance in the offseason. They didn't have personal trainers. They couldn't pay $750,000 to take care of their body. If they were born with their genetics in the time machine and moved up to today, they'd be great. Same. If the guys today were put back in the time machine back in that time and they didn't have those advantages, guess what? They wouldn't be as big and strong as they are. So the time machine works both ways, or it should work both ways. If you dominate in your era, you dominate in your era. That's how people should grade it, but who cares? This is the best Eagles team of all time. Is it the best team of all time? I mean, there's Miami 72 is undefeated. I always joke the best Patriots team lost. The best Eagles team before this year lost. Sometimes you don't even win, but it's a very good team. Doesn't matter. Just enjoy it.
Good stuff there. No limit. Thank you for the super chat, brother. I appreciate it.